So I am so thankful to get to introduce to you guys two of our good friends, Joe and Melissa Bradley. And these, as JJ put it a while ago, they're pillars at this church. If you've been coming to this church for any amount of time, you have ran into these two. I think they founded the church, didn't they? Weren't they one of the founders? Melissa worked at the church for a long time, just up until recently, in our preschool, and just so thankful for their hearts. They're if they're not hanging out with their kids, they're up here serving in some capacity. They've just got a giving heart, giving spirit. We'll do anything in the world for you. I got to spend a lot of time with Joe in a D group with Heath earlier this year, pre-COVID, and just love getting to know Joe. And again, just two of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. So I am grateful for them to take some time out of their week with a busy schedule and 4 little kids, little babies, and to come and speak to us. So without any further ado, let me introduce to you guys Joe and Melissa Bradley.
Gosh, couldn't have found a smaller table. I know with 4 kids, we don't get this much time together, so as close as we can get, right? So, like Andy said, my name is Joe Bradley. This is my wife, Melissa. We've been married 17 years now. So it's kind of funny. The first time we did this, I'd written on here, we'll be married 17 years this July. Not thinking we just survived a 17th year anniversary through COVID. So, yay us. Between that and our 4 kids. So it's always funny because you always want to know people's story, right? You always want to ask people, how did you meet? And whenever somebody asks us that question, inevitably, we always get a good laugh because Melissa's answer is always,
he had a nice truck.
Which, if you know anything about Melissa, that is the lowest denominator possible. But we say that because us is more than anything just 100% God's will. That A, we met, and B, that we met in the time that we did. Because we always joke, like I said, Melissa's sister introduced us because I had a nice truck, and that was important to her. But if we had met even like 6 months before then, neither one of us would give the other person the time of day. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Bremen, went to a small Baptist church there from about the time I was 2 years old. Both my parents very active in the church. My dad was and still is a deacon there. I was saved and baptized when I was about 9 years old. And I think I intellectually knew what it meant to give my life to God. But by the time I got into high school and got a car, I realized how much of a sheltered and just almost indoctrinated life I lived, because at that point, my priorities changed, my desires changed, and I became very, very prideful. I'd grown up very conservative, and then at that time, I kind of tasted the quote-unquote freedom that being a little bit further away from my parents brought me. So I kind of decided to be true to the old saying about preachers and deacons' kids always being the worst, because I was the worst. I partied with my friends, did whatever I thought would make me happy in the moment because I was what I thought was free. During this time, I thought I was the epitome of entitlement. I was after whatever I could that would make me happy. And if I didn't get it from one substance or another, or one activity or one pursuit or the other, I would have to try something else. I just kept looking for something to complete that feeling in my heart. I was living what I thought was my life, and I thought I had it together until I got caught. We'll just say that. I got to ride in the back of a nice little shiny car. And then that's really when I found out what freedom really costs. After that, my parents took every privilege that I'd pretty much ever had away and was forced to go to church at that time. So during that time where I lost what I thought was my freedom, I found out a little bit better about what makes a person actually happy. I graduated high school, went to Carroll Tech at the time to become an electrician, and I worked as an electrician for a little while, but then decided I needed a more stable job and started looking for work in the medical field. That's when I started delivering medical equipment. And during this time, I became much more involved in teaching students at my old church. And that is where I met Melissa.
So I was born and raised here in Carrollton. My parents divorced when I was 3, and I split most of my childhood between their homes and that of my maternal grandparents. My grandfather was a preacher, and for the majority of my childhood, he pastored a small Christian church just across the Alabama state line. He also taught at Bethany Christian Church here in Carrollton on Wednesday nights and preached revivals at all the local Christian churches in Carroll County. So I literally grew up in church, usually sitting on the very first pew right beside my grandmother, Mama Nell. I accepted Christ and was baptized at the age of 12. My school years were very successful, and I worked hard and excelled academically. Right before I started high school, my grandfather passed away, and our family returned to First Christian Church as most of my grandmother's friends were all members there. I joined the youth group, and despite my painful level of shyness, I developed lifelong friendships and was mentored by incredible youth leaders like Dwayne and Tina Hicks, Nathan and Debbie Collins, and Danny and Vicki Wethington. I graduated from Carrollton High School and moved to Gainesville, Georgia to attend a small women's college. While I was there, I would drive to Alpharetta on Tuesday nights and attend a college student gathering at North Point Christian Church called 722. After almost 2 years in Gainesville, I felt the Lord leading me back home to Carrollton. I'd stayed in touch with all my high school youth group friends and leaders, so coming back to such an incredible community made the difficult news of telling my parents that I had decided to change schools as well as my major a little easier. In January of 2001, I transferred to UWG and moved in with my grandmother. One evening, my younger sister, who is also the complete opposite of me, told me she wanted me to meet a guy that she knew because he had a nice truck. So I didn't have anything else to do. I reluctantly agreed to attend a church service with her at a small Baptist church in Bremen, and well, the rest is history.
Yep. And so that night, it was love at first sight. I mean, how could she resist me?
Yes, because going to Waffle House after church is really romantic. A few months later, we officially started dating.
Yeah, okay. So she actually did make me work for the whole title of being a boyfriend. But after finally wearing her down, we actually started dating. So this would have been about September of 01. While we were dating, we were very cognizant of trying to stay grounded in our faith. While we while we were dating, we attended each other's churches. She was at First Christian. Again, I was at a very small Southern Baptist church. We actively served in both areas of our churches, the student ministry at my church. I was in the children's ministry at First Christian. And we went to listen to Louis quite a few times at 722. During this time, it was very apparent to me that Melissa was the woman I wanted to marry because A, I outkicked my coverage. And let's see, she likes when I talk real good. Just read. You know what? No ad libbing. Let's see how red I can make her face. Okay, back to the script. So, after being the Southern gentleman I made sure I asked her parents for permission. So, obviously, her dad threatened to kill me if I ever hurt her in any way. When I asked Mama Nell, she playfully punched me in the arm and gave me her 50-year-old engagement ring to propose with. So, using that, I proposed to Melissa on Christmas Eve of 2002.
A week later, we took our first mission trip together to Piedras Negras, Mexico, with our friends who are now our life group. Throughout our engagement, we always joked about the line from the movie Jerry Maguire, "You complete me." But one night in particular, I remember us having a serious discussion about how we did not complete each other. We were already complete individuals in Christ, and that was very important for us to remember when we were tempted to find our worth in one another. We did our premarital counseling that spring with Debbie and Nathan Collins, and Dwayne performed our wedding ceremony on July 19th, 2003, at the same Little Baptist Church in Bremen where we first met.
And of course, in pure Dwayne fashion, he was late to our own wedding.
I had no idea, though. It was great. I'm sorry.
He rushed in, went and saw Melissa, gave her a hug, and then came out and was ready to say the vows, literally. So we've been married for 17 years now with absolutely no problems whatsoever, perfect marriage. It is really what most of us would like to say, right? But in reality, we've never really had any huge blowout fights or matters that would cause one of us to leave or anything. Most of the struggles that we've had as a couple have been more related to the little tiny things that build up until they blow out. One of the things that's always been a struggle for me has been I don't share. I don't talk really at all. My feelings, I'm not a good person to share my feelings with. I have such a laissez-faire attitude. Nothing really stuck out to me that needed or that I wanted to share.
So this was always really frustrating and hurtful to me because I felt like Joe didn't want to confide in me or share his thoughts or opinions on whatever situation we were facing at the time. But my reactions to his silence were not helpful either because I would usually just throw the silence right back and start cleaning things, very forcefully cleaning whatever I could find in our tiny home. Then the frustration would continue building until we were just snappy and mean to one another.
So we did something that sounds probably a little ridiculous to others, but was honestly extremely hard for me. We actually scheduled a night every week where I would have to spend however long it took for me to actually talk about my feelings. Like, I think it was a Tuesday night we scheduled, and I would literally just sit there. And sometimes it would take about 10 or 15 minutes, me trying to fight back chest pain.
It was
Just so-
awkward in the beginning.
It really was, because it's just nothing, like I never grew up in that kind of atmosphere. But it was something that Melissa needed to hear from me. And so that was something that I really had to do. And one of the good things that came out of this, and one of the things that really stuck out to me, as we read This Momentary Marriage by John Piper, and it really gave me some focus on better ways to talk together and helped us focus our marriage more on Christ. So after we were married for about 5 years, we decided we wanted to start a family. It took us about a year to finally get pregnant and greet our little 9-pound bundle of joy that was Jack.
And this was a particularly difficult time for us. Prior to Jack's birth, we had sold our starter home and moved back in with my grandmother, whose health was declining rapidly and did not need to live by herself anymore. The difficulty lay in the fact that as a perfectionist with a type A personality, I thought I would be able to manage all the upcoming challenges easily. I had plans and a schedule and had made plenty of lists, and so everything would be fine, just fine. But by the time Jack was 4 months old, I was diagnosed with severe postpartum depression. I began taking medication and attending weekly counseling sessions. And it was then I realized that one of the primary idols I fight on a daily basis is control.
And it didn't help because at this time I was an ICU nurse and I was working at night then. And you would think that being a night shift nurse would make baby duties a lot better. But Jack was a devil baby. He woke up every 2 hours on the hour.
If he even went to sleep.
Yeah. And on the nights that I was home, it didn't matter what I did, he would not stop crying. There were some nights that I would literally, this was like January, February, I would wrap us up in blankets and go outside and walk around the house just so Melissa could get a few minutes of sleep. Let's see. I lost my place. We're on a script, aren't we? Yep, there it is. So during this, we were trying to take care of Mama Nell, who was 91 years old, and she also thought she was there to take care of us. So it was a little frustrating to her to not be able to help, but taxing on us because we could hear her trying to shuffle down the hall at 3 a.m., trying to help with a crying baby. So it was a trying time to say the least.
So when Jack was 10 months old, he began sleeping through the night, and I found out I was pregnant with our second son, Sam. Mama Nell's health had declined to the point where she needed more intensive care, so she moved to an assisted living facility closer to my mom and uncle. And about 6 weeks before I delivered Sam, we moved into our current home.
So during the next couple of years, it was pretty much standard new parent problems, managing two kids, finding out which preschool would be best. I continued working nights in the ICU, and Melissa at that point started working part-time at the church as the preschool pastor. When Jack was about 5, I'd been working nights for almost 10 years at that point. Melissa and I felt that I needed to find a different work schedule for our family. We discussed me working day shift, but that just created different problems because working 12-hour shifts. Finally, when Jack was about to turn 6, I was able to take a job in administration at the hospital, creating a stroke program for the hospital. This was a wonderful opportunity for us because I was able to work 9 to 5 hours and had holidays and weekends off. And then Melissa got an idea in her head that changed our lives forever. Many of you know this story, but if not, it's probably one of the most awesome stories we'll ever be able to
think so.
share. One Wednesday night, when we were still at 113 at the Chicken Farms, I was working with Fusion, the 7th through 12th graders, and Melissa was in the treehouse. I got a text from her that said something along the lines of, "Come over here when you get a free minute." So I walked over there, and she took me to one of the rooms and pointed to a little girl and said, "We're going to adopt her." Now, this is from the woman who lays out the royal treatment for any stray cat that comes up our yard. Literally, I've got 6 on my back porch right now. Not joking. So I thought this was just something that would kind of blow over. She sees a cute girl. Yes, she was in foster care. Yes, we knew the foster family, but she'll see the cuteness and it'll wear off for a little bit. Go ahead.
At the time, this little girl was in foster care with Stephen and Melissa Beam. They brought her to church on that Wednesday night, and when she walked in the door of the preschool building, our eyes met, and the Lord spoke to me. "She's yours." There was no audible voice, but it was completely and unmistakably divine. I promise I don't make a habit of picking out preschoolers to take home with me, so it's still safe to bring your child to the treehouse, don't worry. But this was different, and so we talked with the Beams, and they encouraged us to become foster parents. We prayed and thought and considered all the ramifications. We even had the opportunity to provide respite for the Beams and babysit for Haley. After much prayer and consideration, we began taking the impact classes at DFACS in February of 2016. I walked into the very first class and told the social worker, "There's a little girl named Haley, and we would like to adopt her." And she quickly responded that it really doesn't work that way. But I still proceeded to write Haley's name at the top of our initial application.
So we went through all these classes, and it was a lot of paperwork, literally like 200 pages worth of paperwork. They want to know everything about you, down to the very last detail. One of the questions literally was, "What was your last fight about?" Like intermarriage fight. "What did y'all last argue about? How much money do you make? How much do you spend? Where do you spend it?" After spending, honestly, a couple months filling out all of the paperwork, taking the classes, we turned everything in. And so then we waited and kept waiting, quite honestly. We understand we're working with the government here. So for a couple months, we just waited and just kind of trusted the process. After that, we called and asked about the status of our application. So I called them up and I said, we're just calling to check on that, the status of our application. Are we getting ready for a home visit, or is there anything else we need? And they told us, well, we can't actually find your application. So it was like, You lost our application? No, 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 no. We didn't lose it. We just can't find it. Yeah, that's the definition of lost. So after a couple more weeks of us trying to decide if we wanted to take the time to fill out all of this paperwork again, they called us and they found our paperwork. So we should be hearing from them pretty soon. Soon is very relative, especially with the government, right? So this would have been what, March? No, when they found the paperwork. Yeah, so it was probably about March, April, they found our paperwork again, and they finally got in touch with us in July to come do a home inspection. And then came even more waiting. During all of this, we were wondering if something was wrong with us. Was there something wrong with what we turned in? Did we make the wrong checkbox? Did we not make enough money compared to what we spend? Was something wrong with us? Was God making this difficult for us because we didn't need any more kids, or just wasn't his plans? And during all of this process, Haley's mom, her biological mom, finished her case plan with DFACS, and she went back home in late July of 2016. So we even changed our paperwork and said that we'll take in any baby that needs a place to stay. I mean, DFACS is always asking for foster parents. We're like, maybe this will speed up the process. If we change it from we want to foster to adopt to we'll just take in any baby that needs a safe place to stay, even if it's for one night. And we still waited. And so this honestly probably was one of the hardest parts in our marriage, because this wasn't one thing that it was my fault and I could work on, or it was Melissa's fault and she could work on it. It was us having to look at our marriage and asking God, are we even worthy of this? We felt completely worthless. All the other families that we had gone through classes with had already gotten placements, had already gotten kids, and we were still stuck in limbo. And for us to look at on paper, I'm a nurse, she's a certified teacher working as a pastor. How much better does it look on paper? And all of this, we thought we were doing the good work God had called us to do. So we wrestled with our own insecurities every single week, thinking that we were not good enough or that God didn't think we were capable. Now, keep in mind, we started this process in February, and it was almost August at this point, and we still had not been approved as foster parents.
I remember one afternoon I got upset and told Joe that I was just going to call DFACS and tell them we were no longer interested in becoming foster parents. I then went to the guest room and took out the bed and gave it away to a friend on Facebook. I was convinced we weren't going to need it. The waiting was just unbearable, and I was so frustrated. But Joe talked me off my ledge, and we discussed how we both believed God wanted us to grow our family, and maybe this was just not the avenue he wanted us to take. So for the next 5 months, we tried to have another biological child. That didn't work. Then on the afternoon of January 17th, I had just gotten home from picking up the boys at school when my phone rang. It was our caseworker. And when I answered the phone, she said, "Melissa, you and Joe are approved, and don't cry because it's for Haley." During Haley's 5 months with her biological mother, her baby brother was born. His biological father had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and all the stress caused her mom to return to her pattern of drug abuse. This led to a DFACS referral from Haley's pre-K teacher, as well as one from the local emergency room. So DFACS took Haley, who was 4 at the time, and Eli, who was 2 months old, into custody and brought them to our house within about 4 hours of that phone call. I immediately called our life group, and they jumped into action, showing up with a new bed because I had gotten rid of the other one, diapers, clothes, and baby gear. I opened the doors of the social worker's car, and we welcomed 2 kids into our home with nothing but a sippy cup and 2 plastic bags of clothes. Jack was 7 at the time, and Sam was 5. Were amazing. They took it all in stride and became awesome big brothers. Sam even took the initiative to start what we referred to as Sam School with Haley. The 2 of them are only 11 months apart, and he would sit her down at the table and show her how to write the alphabet. He would get the shape sorter and teach her shapes and colors. I had worried up until that point if we were going to put too much pressure on the boys or require too much of them at such a young age. But I watched them truly love like Jesus. They were so patient with Haley, whose speech was very broken and hard to understand. They doted on Eli and fought over who would get to hold him and give him a bottle. We fostered Haley and Eli for nearly 2 years. It was a long, challenging, and emotional roller coaster.
And so during all of this, the waiting and the questioning, we kind of pulled in on ourselves. We didn't reach out to the other people in our lives. And I think, well, pretty much I know this was what contributed to us feeling so distraught and bitter waiting up until that point. Because but once we got the call from DFACS about getting the children, we've been so thankful for the community around us. From the first night we let our community know what was going on, we were blessed with just about everything we needed. Our family stepped up, stepped into our lives, and they've helped us run kids to and from ball games, helped watch 2 kids while we did something else with the others.
In April of 2018, the state terminated the parental rights of Haley and Eli's biological mother. And in September 2018, we signed our intention to adopt. On December 4th, 2018, we officially finalized the adoption, and they both became Bradleys. They had lived with us for almost 2 years at this point. From the moment we took custody of them, we began seeking out help for their developmental needs. Eli was malnourished and was a few months behind developmental milestones. Haley had much more significant delays, speech apraxia, and a history of sexual abuse. Over the years, I have taught and then pastored countless children with special needs, but now sitting on the other side of the table as a parent is humbling, to say the least. Both of the children have made tremendous gains in all areas of their development. Eli has a genetic medical condition that we have no way of knowing how it may affect his future growth and development. Haley continues to struggle with speech apraxia and has difficulty navigating social situations. Throughout all of this, my struggles with control and perfection have been really hard. To be completely honest, I want to fix them.
And in all honesty, there are some things that we don't know if they ever will be fixed or even fixable. We struggle every day with questions like, are we too harsh for the situation, or should we be more harsh in this situation? There are so many questions, and there's very little hope of ever getting the answers, or at least getting the answers when we want them and we think that we need them. We don't know if Haley will grow out of any of the differences that she has, or this is innately tied to who she is. This is probably the biggest issue we are dealing with right now: uncertainty. We don't know what tomorrow or even the next hour will bring.
Throughout all of this, I try to remind myself that I'm held to a standard of grace, not perfection. I also have to remember that there is nothing I can do to fix the problems we are dealing with. The Lord chose us to be Haley and Eli's parents, just like He chose us for Jack and Sam. And I have to trust that through us, He can use us for the good of His kingdom, even if we can't see that in the day to day. If I had to sum up our marriage in 3 words, I would say commitment, obedience, and community. We made a commitment to each other and to God. We have been obedient to Him and the things He's asked us to do. And because of the community we have built over the years, we've been able to sustain through all of the hardships we've endured.
Thank you, Joe and Melissa. It's really cool to hear your story. It's a little different than a lot of the stories we hear. Um, Often the stories we hear are a big conflict between the two, right? And you guys kind of took conflict together. But I love what you ended with there: commitment, obedience, and community, right? And all 3 have been key in your story. And honestly, I think are key in all marriages, working out the way God intends for them to be worked out. If we're committed to Him, if we're obedient to the way He's called us, committed to each other, and obedient to the way He's called us to live, right? And then we surround ourselves with the community. That's why we do Reengage. You guys could learn everything we teach here on your own. Probably won't, but you could, right? But in the context of community, in the same way that you guys were able to be better parents or are able to, right? You guys are still fantastic parents. And I know your kids are, all of them, biological and adopted, are blessed to be in y'all's household. And man, the Bradleys love well. If you guys don't know the Bradleys, you should get to know them if you get the opportunity, because they love really well. But I know that for you guys, that understanding of the importance of community was a huge. And I hope you who are here, those who are joining us online, and those who are here with us in person, that you understand that much like Joe and Melissa would not have gotten through 4 kids all at once, what in the world, without the help of others. I'll be honest, you're not going to get through the struggles that you will deal with in your marriage without the help of others. And that is how God designed it. Okay. So thank you guys for coming and sharing and giving up your night. You could be doing a myriad of other things. I'm sure your kids require many nights during the week with school and sports and all that. But thank you for sharing with us tonight.